Man, growing up, I was a big fan of The Matrix. I thought everyone in that movie looked so cool. What I did not predict is how much The Matrix would shape our language in everything from politics to culture to technology. Today on the show, The Matrix just turned 25. You'll hear about its massive legacy. I'm Elamin Abdul-Mahmoud. This is Commotion. All right, so when it comes to sci-fi films, I think there's no question that we've had our fair share of huge breakthrough movies that just changed everything. We're talking about Star Wars, we're talking about Alien, we're talking about 2001: A Space Odyssey. But in 1999, very few sci-fi films had the impact that this one had.
The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth.
What truth?
That you are a slave, Neo, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind.
That is a speech that could become your whole personality back in 1999. That's what that is. That is from The Matrix. That is Morpheus, played by Lawrence Fishburne. And he's giving one of the most memorable reality checks in film history to the one, Neo, played by Keanu Reeves. The Matrix, I would say, is considered by a lot of people to be one of the great sci-fi films of all time. And it's also given us a seismic shift, right? It's given us this seismic shift on genre and pop culture. And it's the shift that continues to be felt right now. This year marks the 25th anniversary of The Matrix. And joining me now to talk about the legacy and the impact of that movie, Bilge Ebiri is here, Rad Simonpillai is here. Gentlemen, whether it's the red pill or the blue pill, it's up to you, but welcome to the show either way.
Hello, I don't even know how to respond to that. Hello.
That's fair. That's reasonable.
It's good to be here. Am I here?
That's actually the reaction that I was going for. Okay, Bill, I'm going to start with you on this. The Matrix was directed by the Wachowskis. What do we know about who or what inspired their vision for this film?
You know, like all successful films, or like all wildly successful films, the number of influences that they had increases by the year. So that at this point, you know, it's got a million influences. You know, Zen philosophy, Jean Baudrillard, cyberpunk, anime, and a lot of it, you know, a lot of it they talked about at the time. I mean, obviously, anime was a huge influence. You know, today we think of anime as a much more popular art form. Back then, it was kind of cultish, underground. I mean, films like Akira and Ghost in the Shell had come out, but they had cult followings. You know, they weren't like, you know, the average person wouldn't have really known what those movies were. But then also Hong Kong cinema. And Hong Kong cinema, you know, had already infiltrated and influenced American cinema. I mean, you had directors like John Woo and Choi Hark coming over to the U.S. and making movies here like, you know, Face Off and Knock Off and stuff like that. But what they did was, you know, what the Wachowskis did was they fused sort of the fighting action cinema of the 80s and 90s with this kind of very cool, you know, international style of like wire fu and all that stuff. I think that really created something that a lot of us had just never seen before.
And to the extent to which we've never seen it before, me in 1999, just trying to do those fight moves by constantly trying to dodge bullets in slow motion. Let me tell you this, it doesn't work in real life. Very disappointing to find that out. Rad, when this movie was released, it was 1999. Talk to me about that moment. Let's talk about where sci-fi was at that period of time.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, like as Bilge was saying, like there's so many influences to this, and you know, immediately you might be struck by the fact that this is basically like Terminator meets Star Wars with, you know, some Metropolis and Blade Runner aesthetic thrown in. But it's updated for 1999 in terms of kind of fears and anxieties. I mean, if you think about what is happening in 1999, all of a sudden, I think we all had high-speed internet by that point, and we all had Nokias and we're playing Snake on our phone, and it felt like the technology was limitless, you know, and like the world of possibility was ahead of us, like millennial, you know, like the future's knocking at our door. And Y2K, it felt like someone was about to pull the plug on all of us, and we were kind of staring over the cliff, over the edge of a cliff or something. So the movies of that moment, I think they were always about they were the sci-fi was started to be updated about like our fears of everything being hacked, our bank accounts being hacked, our personalities, our brains being hacked. So you think about the net, you think about Dark City, you think about Johnny Mnemonic, Virtuosity. All of these movies are all about like kind of our brains being taken over by computers. Even Existenz, David Cronenberg's movie, which actually came out just like a few weeks after The Matrix, and really like Existenz is essentially just horny Matrix.
Wait, are you suggesting that The Matrix isn't horny?
I mean, no, it is, but I mean, you know,
among the many problems of that statement, someone should take that up with Cronenberg. Someone should say, "Hey, man, did you realize that actually what you really made is just horny Matrix?" I don't imagine he would object to this. Look, looking back, it's easy, I think, to get why The Matrix was such a big deal, but it's worth noting that a lot of people didn't know what The Matrix was actually about when it first came out in 1999. I want to play you guys a clip of Quentin Tarantino just remembering watching this movie in a theater.
The place was jam-packed, and there was a real electricity in the air. But then this thought hit me, the idea of turning an audience on so much that they're there on the Friday that the movie opens, but we don't really know what we're excited about. We don't really know what's going to happen. And then that movie happens. It was a profound experience. And I had enough foresight to put the thoughts together before the lights went down.
Bilge, your reaction to what Quentin is saying there?
I actually had a similar experience. You know, I mean, I saw it opening day. Now, one thing that we don't talk about enough, I think, is the marketing for The Matrix was brilliant. You know, the teasers, the trailers, they didn't tell you what the movie was about. And this is, I mean, it to somebody watching them today, it would probably blow their minds because trailers basically give away the entire plot,
thing. Yes.
Nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess maybe like the long legs trailers kind of didn't, and I think they were kind of buying into a bit of the Matrix vibe from back then. But
yeah.
I remember the trailers were like, they ask you, what is the Matrix, right? And then they showed you little things. And what you saw was so alien because they showed you a little glimpse of some of the bullet time stuff, which, you know, obviously none of us had seen before.
Yeah.
So you just were like, what the hell is this thing? And, you know, it made you want to see it. And it also made you want to see it before anyone else did. It made you want to see it opening day, which was a big thing back then. And what's most important is, and I think Tarantino's hinting at this, the movie paid it off, right? You get sometimes you get trailers that are really good, and then you go see the movie and you're like, well, that wasn't all that special. But The Matrix was like, I mean, you got the marketing campaign for The Matrix, and then you got The Matrix, which was just like bliss.
Yeah, truly, it's just a blissful cinematic experience. Rad and I have a long history of disagreeing about movies and whether we vibe with a movie or not. Rad, you have a chance to continue the streak. What was your reaction when you first watched The Matrix?
Can I first speak to even just like the reaction to the marketing?
Get in there.
Because I remember the marketing as Bill described it in the sense that like even the website was whatisthematrix.com.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is this trash? Like I didn't want anything. I wanted nothing to do with this movie because I was just like, you know, like, oh, a bunch of goths are wearing black leather and listening to heavy metal music, and Johnny Mnemonic is in there, and Lawrence Fishburne, wasn't he just in Event Horizon? And no, I'm looking forward to the Phantom Menace, you guys.
Yeah,
like,
of course you were.
That's where my mindset was at that time. And and I was blown away by it. And I was blown away by, you know, when I was eventually nudged into, no, you got to see it. It's actually good. But like, you know, not for all the, there is no spoon kind of pop philosophy, but just as an action movie, you know, just like bullets blazing, Keanu Reeves kung fuing his way through things. Like I was having a great time with the movie. And then it's, you know, and then, you know, your appreciation of it grows, right? Because then, you know, you go to college and it's like, oh, Baudrillard. Oh, that's what they meant in that movie when Neo's holding the Simulacra book. And that's, and, you know, like you learn about Plato's allegory of the cave, and the movie just grows richer as you go back and you revisit it. And you learn all, it's interesting because like, you know, today we're in this era of like, you know, Marvel movies and things like that. The Easter eggs are like kind of in franchises jokes. But here was a movie where the Easter eggs are Christian iconography and nihilism, you know, like it's like what was going on there. Right. So yeah.
What you're getting at is the way that we've come to sort of treat the Matrix itself as a text. And I actually want to come back to that idea because it has become a rich text where the people project all kinds of things on. But first, I want to talk about the thing that you just mentioned, Rad, which is the idea of, hey, am I really here for Keanu Reeves? That's a big deal to me, Bilge. It feels like a worthwhile deal, right? Like the star of the Matrix is, of course, Keanu. 1999, this is Speed Keanu. This is Point Break Keanu. This is, I suppose, the excellent adventure of Bill and Ted Keanu. But to what degree is the casting of Keanu Reeves key to making The Matrix work, you think?
It's absolutely key. And at the same time, we weren't sure it was going to work because, I mean, remember, Speed is 94, I think.
Yeah.
And Point Break is, I think, the year or two before that. And Bill and Ted is even before that.
Yeah.
So there's this long period where we were not sure Keanu Reeves could act, right? I mean, I don't mean to knock him. I love Keanu.
Yeah.
And I was on the Keanu train very early on. I saw River's Edge when it came out, and I was like, oh, this guy's going to be a star. But then, everybody would talk about how he felt too much like a surfer boy, and that was, I think, some of it just had to do with just like the pitch of his voice, you know. But then he would try to do accents. He did like Much Ado About Nothing. And, he tried to do a Southern accent in The Devil's Advocate. And I mean, one of my favorite movies, Little Buddha, he is the Buddha. He is Siddhartha. But like, It's kind of like, it's like a punchline, right?
Yeah.
And so we weren't sure that it was going to work. But then I think that the Wachowskis really kind of clued into a sort of everyman quality to Keanu. I mean, he is a bit of Neo is like out of his element at first, right? And he's perfect for that because that's kind of how that was always kind of the vibe that he gave. But then there's also this like inner serenity to him so that once he becomes Neo, once he actually sort of gains and masters his powers, you see the other side of Keanu. He's an actor with not a ton of range, but like he had the perfect range for this particular movie, and I think he needed the movie as much as the movie needed him.
The thing you hear all the time, even to this day, about Keanu Bilge is he's someone who doesn't do a lot. This idea that he doesn't have a lot of range, but he's doing a lot on screen quite often. Is just that there's a restraint, to the way that he sort of exhibits the things that he does. When there were all these other stories about like other people who were in the running to play Neo. And then every time you hear one of those names, you're like, what are you talking about? You needed someone who can absorb all this wild energy and just kind of be calm and still. And like Keanu Reeves' superpower is kind of stillness. Do you want to talk about some of the other names, Bilge, who were maybe in the running to play Neo?
Well, I mean, one of the biggest was Will Smith.
Wild.
Who has since Wild Wild West, Will Smith, which is the movie that he did instead of The Matrix, which, some people are trying to reclaim now, but it's not a very good motion picture.
Yeah, we will not be doing that on this show. Yes.
Keep when you do the Wild Wild West episode. I'm probably not one of the guests, but also, I mean, and Will Smith has very charmingly addressed this and done like little videos about like saying no to the part.
Yeah.
The Wachowskis apparently wanted Johnny Depp, who at the time was a really good actor, actually, but like is not a particularly energetic actor. Mm-hmm. And I can't imagine Johnny Depp really doing like proper stunts.
No.
Like the trajectory that Keanu goes on after this movie where he becomes like Mr. Stunt Guy and does his own stunts and becomes like kind of, really just goes down that path. That was not going to happen with Johnny Depp.
No.
And then I also heard somewhere that they also considered Sandra Bullock for the part of Neo, which I'm like, wow, Hollywood really thought Sandra Bullock was like the E-girl of the 90s, right?
You know what? I would like to see that version. I'm not going to lie to you. You say that, I'm like, I'm on board with that one. Certainly not on board with the Will Smith idea of The Matrix, because Will Smith to me is maybe the opposite of stillness on screen. He's like the guy who's doing too much maybe all the time. I should say, my name is Elamin Abdul Mahmoud. This show is called Commotion, and we are talking today on the 25th anniversary of The Matrix. Bilge Ebiri is here. Rad Simonpillai is here. That anniversary is this year, and so we're looking back on the film's legacy. Rad, I don't think it can be emphasized enough the ways that The Matrix influenced sci-fi genre and filmmaking. What's one way that you think The Matrix maybe changed the game back then?
I mean, if you just look at this idea of CGI landscapes and the artificial landscapes, like the green screen stuff, I mean, like, of course, that stuff was kind of already there. But I think, when you look at the way the Matrix used it, like I mentioned how Matrix and Phantom Menace, they opened within months of each other, right?
Yeah.
And you look at Phantom Menace, almost the entire thing is like digital landscapes and actors and digital landscapes.
And you're a big Phantom Menace guy.
Huge. yeah. I love CGI green screen movies. But the thing is, oh, now you just messed me up.
I am. I'm sorry.
No, but the thing with Matrix is, like, I mean, you think about kind of the innovation of the CGI, how it was so exciting for that movie. One being the bullet time thing that you were referencing earlier, like the kind of bending over backwards where they have the cameras flip around you while you're like kind of trapped in this certain motion or whatever.
Yeah.
But also, like, even the way they're using CGI, like Matrix was using that in a way that felt purposeful, because this is a movie about a battle between the real and the artificial, and Matrix is kind of embracing that battle by having these, like, it's not hiding the artificiality, it's embracing that artificiality while also giving you, as Bilge mentioned earlier, real wire work, real kung fu, real actual sets and stuff, real let me slam, like, actual, like, big props and things like that, like, so there is that, like, Matrix is embracing the artificiality in a purposeful way and not using the green screen and all that stuff as a cost-cutting measure, which it has become. So like that was the huge impact in terms of advancing technology, so to the point where now everything's artificial and hideous and a cost-cutting measure, but it was using it in a way that was meaningful.
Bilge, we talked earlier, Rad sort of alluded to this, to the idea that The Matrix has sort of become a larger pop culture text. And it has given us a lot of ideas that have migrated outside of the universe of the film and into just like regular cultural language, right? Like the idea of like the red pill and the blue pill, like when Kamala Harris was sort of being on the ascendancy to replace Joe Biden, you heard people talking about being coconut pilled. Like this is just like a thing that has entered popular culture lexicon. Where do you see the influence of The Matrix in pop culture now?
Well, also, I mean, when Kamala Harris replaced Joe Biden, there were a lot of people who were like, we're living in a simulation, aren't we?
Yes.
And that's, I mean, that's an idea that predates The Matrix, but The Matrix popularized that idea. Nobody talked about living in a simulation before they saw The Matrix.
That's right.
The average person didn't. But I think that, I mean, to go off on what Rod said, there is this idea, and you see it in a number of films in 1999 specifically. This idea that your reality is actually something artificial that is controlled by powers beyond your vision, right? I mean, even Eyes Wide Shut is about that, right? I mean, there's so many films that tie into that. Fight Club. I mean, so many films where reality is pulled out from under you. The Matrix, I think, is kind of at the top of that. I mean, The Matrix is kind of the pop cultural nexus where that really takes off. I remember I once interviewed Prince, and Prince was like a huge Matrix fan. I mean, he would always talk about The Matrix, and he applied it to the music industry and how, like, people controlled the music industry and the reality around artists and stuff like that. So in a way, it provides this kind of perfect metaphor for dealing with the unreality of the world we're living in, which of course the internet totally enhances.
Bilge, I gotta say, I do this show every day. That is the biggest flex anyone has ever dropped on this show. That you interviewed Prince. No one has ever dropped a larger flex than I once interviewed Prince. Let me just casually tell you what he thought of The Matrix.
The man loved The Matrix. I can tell you that. The man he just like always talked about The Matrix.
Wow, me and Prince, we're maybe exactly alike. It's hard to say. Rad, I gotta ask you about the fact that there's something that's incongruent here, which is that we've spent most of this segment talking about and celebrating the original Matrix, pretending like the sequels don't exist, pretending like they're not currently in this moment at work at a Matrix 5, even though I gotta tell you, was it me who asked for it? No, sir, it was not. How different do you think the Matrix's legacy would be if they'd just been like, we just did the one movie and then we're completely out?
So, I don't think it would have had the staying power with the one movie, and not because like any of these other movies. Yeah, like, and then again, like, believe me, I understand your apprehensions with the sequels. And look, like, I had some fun with Reloaded and Revolutions, while not really considering like that they hold nothing on the original movie.
Yeah.
But I think to stay in the conversation, these movies need to have sequels. They have to be parsed out. Because if you think about like one-off classics, especially when the sci-fi genre, think about a movie like Blade Runner. Think about how that remained a sort of cult movie and wasn't in the lexicon the way Alien was. And Alien because it had its sequels, and Terminator because it had its sequels, right? I think Matrix had to have that conversation keep going for people, for just on pop cultural terms, for pop culture to keep consuming it and revisiting it and still propping up the original, even while all these other ones are kind of a waste of your time and just kind of a reminder of why you need to revisit the original anyway.
Two things I didn't expect to happen today. One, for me to be exactly like Prince, and two, for Rad to maybe kind of advocate for sequels. Bilge, what do you make of this? What do you make of the fact that like the suggestion that Rad is making, that it was a sequel as a sort of pushed forward the legacy of that original one?
I mean, it's kind of a Pyrrhic victory in my mind, because I think Rad is absolutely right. I think the sequels kind of keep it in the pop cultural conversation, but I did not like Reloaded and Revolutions. I actually did like was it Resurrections, the most recent one.
Recent one, yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to the next one. It just sounds like a terrible idea. But you know, I wasn't looking forward to Resurrections either. So who knows?
Yeah.
But I do think that the sequels do keep it in the conversation. At the same time, though, I don't think the sequels are any good. And when we talk about The Matrix, we almost never talk about the sequels, right? We're still referencing the original Matrix. And one of the things I love about The Matrix, and why I really do kind of wish that it had ended with the first one, it ends on a perfect contradiction, right? I mean, it ends on Neo kind of announcing to the world, or announcing to the powers that be, I'm going to show these people a world beyond their wildest imaginations. I'm going to show them a world where anything is possible. And it's funny, because if you think about it, the world where anything is possible is the Matrix, right? The Matrix is where you can learn Kung Fu in 2 seconds, or where you can download an entire arsenal in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
Right. Reality in the world of the Matrix is like people eating gruel and like wading through sewage like near the Earth's core. It's horrible, right? The world where you can do anything, you can be anything, you can be anyone. That's the Matrix. But the movie, and then the movie ends, and you are left with that contradiction. And then they spend all these other movies trying to explain it, which I'm like, why?
I take issue with this idea that we don't reference Reloaded. I say ergo all the time, okay? Like, sorry, that has become part of my daily lexicon.
But also, are we not going to spend just a moment of being like, Bilge, you want to be plugged into the Matrix? Is that what you're telling me, man? Is that you're like, actually, don't unplug me, Neo. Keep me in this world, please.
Sir, I am already plugged into the Matrix. We all are.
Right before we go, I just want to go back to something that you were talking about before. Like, that's the Matrix's relationship to technology and machines. Right now, artificial intelligence is something that we're talking about all the time. We're asking those same questions about what is real and what is not. What do you make of that aspect of the Matrix's legacy?
I mean, like, first off, it just tells me like how little has changed, right? Because the fears and the anxieties are same. And if anything, like, the Matrix has just gotten more real, right? Like, we're now seeing like exactly what the Matrix was talking about in the same way. And it once again, it's the same fear in the sense that like we are still feeling too connected. We're still feeling like it's like Y2K all over again. They could just pull the plug on us. Like, did we not just have CrowdStrike happen last week, right, a couple of weeks ago? And we felt the effects. So, I mean, that just means like, yo, the Matrix is all too real. We're all living in the Matrix, and I'm Neo.
That's in fact the takeaway. The takeaway is Rad Simonpillai is personally Neo. Rad, can I just say that today is my last day for the rest of this week. I'm very delighted that when I leave this chair, it's going to be you who's going to be sitting in it for the rest of the week. Thanks for doing that, pal.
Thanks for having me. It'll be like Neo taking over, basically. Bye, Morpheus.
Okay. We got to leave it there. But Rad and Bilge, I really appreciate you guys being here. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having
you.
us.
Of course, anytime. Bilge Ebiri is a film critic for Vulture. Rad Simonpillai is a freelance film critic whose work shows up at the Globe and Mail, CTV, and right here on Commotion. And as we just mentioned, Rad Simonpillai is going to be filling in for me for the rest of this week. I'm going to be away. I'm going to be in New York for a few days with my family. I hope that you have a safe week. I'm really looking forward to seeing you in the next week. In the meantime, remember you can listen to the show anytime you like, wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us on YouTube. Also, you can find us on Instagram. We are at Commotion CBC. My name is Elamin Abdul Mahmood. This show is called Commotion. And hey, I'll see you next week.